Welcome back, everyone. So we're back with the Tandy 1000HX. In my most recent video, I added an NEC V20 processor to replace the factory original 8088 CPU, which I still have here. And prior to that, we added the 3-in-1 card that Robert Krennecke designed. And by the way, he's no longer selling these. I bought one of the last ones, I think, and he basically sold me just a bare board and a parts list, and that was it. So I ordered all the parts to populate it and built it myself. But that 3-in-1 card has added a compact flash reader, so it has a hard drive, if you will, an RS-232 port, and it also added the maximum amount of RAM that this chassis can handle, which is 640K. And today, we're going to be adding this, the Tandy 1000 SmartWatch by DJOS. This came from Australia. It took me over a month to receive, but I received it. We're going to put that in. Now, this chip right here, this adapter, this is this slots in between the BIOS and the logic board, and what it does is it gives this machine a perpetual clock calendar. The XT era machines did not have a backed up or a continuously running clock, real-time clock. They didn't have that feature. It was generally added as an aftermarket accessory through an expansion card, but more often than not, it would have been bundled with another adapter. So the original XT logic boards were bare. They just had a keyboard connector and nothing else. So if you wanted video, you buy a video card. You want a serial port, you put a serial card in there. You want a parallel port, you get the idea. And a lot of those cards were bundled as value cards, and they had multiple items in one board. For example, you would find one board would have parallel, serial, and even a real-time clock. Or some of them would be a memory board, right? Because memory back then was added through an expansion slot, not through, dedicated. I don't have an example here. I don't know why I'm pointing there, but you would have a board that you would populate with RAM chips, which is what these are. And sometimes those RAM expansion boards would have a real-time clock built in. That's how they used to do it. And I'm not aware of any real-time clock add-on that Radio Shack offered for the 1000. If one did exist, let me know. I'm not aware of them. But Radio Shack did offer expansion boards for these. I think one of them was a hard drive, as a matter of fact. I think there was an external hard drive you could buy for this. It's very rare, and it might have been third party. And I've never seen one. But there was they were stackable cards. Like the first card would interlock with the second card, and it would interlock. So there was no vertical riser here. It was, the boards would just kind of stack on top of each other. And you had memory. I know there was an RS-232 board. There was something else as well. But anyway, the Tandy 1000 was a budget machine. And when my father went to buy our family's very first computer, this is what he came home with. He bought this back in March of 1990. So happy 32nd birthday, little guy. But he bought this at the local Radio Shack store. In case of and I mentioned this before, but if you're familiar with Southern New Hampshire, there was a Radio Shack computer center. It was like a little expanded Radio Shack, but also specialized in Radio Shack and Tandy computer products. It was located right about where Home Depot is by the Nashua Mall in Nashua, New Hampshire. So the Nashua Mall, it used to be an indoor mall. Now it's, what landmark stores could I? So Denny's off of Route 3. Well, you can see it from Route 3. So Denny's in Nashua. There's a Chinese place, a Mexican place, and there's an LL Bean store. There's a Kohl's and a Home Depot. Right there, right off exit 5, I think it is. Yeah, right near exit 5 off of Broad Street. The Home Depot store used to be a strip mall. And although I think it was actually next to Kahlua. or Halua, sorry, Halua, the Chinese place, because you could see it from the highway. Whatever the case may be, there was a Radio Shack store there, and that's where this came from. One of these days, maybe I'll do a glamour shot. I'll stick it in the parking lot of Home Depot and take a picture of it and say, hey, coming back home. No, forget that. Going back to your birthplace. Anyway, thankfully, due to the efforts of other folks who are into board layout engineering and don't mind doing this stuff for people like me, this little guy, this Tandy 1000 SmartWatch Plus, this is going to add a real-time clock to this old Tandy, and I can't wait to put it in. Doesn't ship with a battery. This actually comes from Australia. It took me over a month to get this guy in, and I'll put a link to where I got it. Maybe you can find one yourself. These are handmade, and they're only made in batches based on sales. So I had to wait almost a year to get this. I think it was a while, and then once I ordered it, it took about a month and a half, 2 months to get it to my house. Didn't cost a lot. I think it was like $30 or so, shipped from Australia, which isn't too bad for something like this. So yeah, thanks to the efforts of the modern hobbyist using modern technologies to save history, to design and build boards in ways that they couldn't really do easily back then, we have little modifications like this. So like in 1990, if you wanted to build a board, you were going to breadboard that sucker and put it in. I don't believe they had, short run or small run board manufacturers back in those days. If you wanted a board made, you had to be, number one, it would have cost a fortune, but you had to have a nice run, if I'm not mistaken. Otherwise, you were going to hand wire and breadboard that whole sucker, because that's just what they did back then. Breadboard still exists, but back then I think everything was breadboarded unless it was a massive production run. But nowadays, boards can be made cheaply. You can have a run of 100 boards made for really not that much money comparatively. And the quality of these boards, by the way, holy crap. This looks like something that would have been mass produced by a bigger company. This is just one guy designing and laying it out, and then he sends it off to the printer, the board maker, and they lay it out, they etch it out, and they send it back. And then he goes ahead and solders all the connectors and chips on. I'm going to make sure he gets credit, whoever it was. I don't recall the guy's name, but I'm going to look it up, and I'll make sure it goes into the description. Don't panic. Look at this. Open hardware. Don't panic. Nice. Version 3.0. This is, by the way, this is the newer version. It's a little bit smaller. So to get this installed, I'm beating around the bush because I don't want to do this. We have to tear the whole machine completely apart. We got to get the shielding off, and we've got to put the chip in. We've got to cut the shielding. We actually have to cut the shielding. But because this modification is now a little bit smaller than it used to be, it don't have to take as much off. So I've got to grab my tin snips, and we're going to make 2 cuts and fold the metal. We're not going to cut it out, make it all jagged. We're going to make it look pretty good. So I'm hoping that comes out all right. All right, let's get cracking. Now, taking the 1000 apart, I don't have to go over that. You just unscrew the bottom. Top comes off. You got to remove everything. Everything's got to go. All right, here we go. All right, so the BIOS ROM chip is right here. It is in position U12, and here it is. Okay. So we're going to take our adapter. We're going to put in a brand new CR1216. They don't ship with batteries. I imagine that's keeps the cost down, but it also makes it easier to ship, because anytime anything is shipped with a battery, it has to be noted, and it's harder to import. It's just a lot more paperwork, not worth it. So I'm going to try to get one. I hate these blister packs. I don't know anyone who likes them, really. They're just hard to get open, but these are scissors. We'll slide the battery in. Positive side up. Just slides right into the holder, I believe. Yeah. Okay. And while it's in the foam, I'm going to just pop my... Actually, no, I'll put the chip in first. So the direction it goes in, it should go in this way. Like so. Let me verify that. Yeah, so it's going to go in like this. You either want to follow the notch, the notch, the notch. Yeah, make sure we get those pins aligned correctly. And you don't want any bent or folded pins. And just like that, we now have a BIOS chip with, we have a real-time clock. Insertion of this, by the way, is a little tricky. It didn't want to go in. I had to really push. So it might be best, thinking back, to take the board out completely and put it on a flat surface and then do it. I mean, these boards aren't exactly fragile, but we don't want to introduce problems if we can avoid it. So, all right. Now we've got to modify the shield, and for that we're going to need some, I don't have a nibbler tool. Nibbling tools are made for this purpose. They're taking out little bits and pieces out of a metal shield like this. Radio Shack used to actually sell nibbling tools, but if we don't remove material, this could potentially short out against the socket. Actually, this won't be so bad. It actually fits in there pretty much. Let me play around. I think that looks okay. So what I did is I cut and folded the metal back, and I actually trimmed off a little bit from that end. It's not beautiful, but not bad either. I'm hoping that it'll give me enough room. Oh yes, it does. It gives me enough room to slide that battery out without a full disassembly. So, you know, in about 5-10 years or so, when that battery's dead, I'll be able to replace it. And the thing that really, I mean, I'm not complaining. I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Not complaining. This is not a complaint, but this part could have been made to fit in that original. If the chip had been shifted over a bit, I mean, it could have been done. But unfortunately, and again, not a complaint, because I didn't expend my time and resources in designing this board and dealing with the vendor, the manufacturer, and all that. That's a lot of work. But I know that because I'm doing it for another project that is unrelated to this. I'm actually working with another company to design a part that has been out of production for 30 plus years. And we're so close to. I'm going to have to get it to sit flush, I'm going to have to trim a little bit off of this side here as well. Just a bit, just a little bit. Let me see if I can do this without a shadow here. Yeah, to get it to sit right, it has to be, because you don't want to slide the metal underneath and have the pins short out, because it's, see, look how close it is to the pins. Yeah, you don't want that happening. Okay, so you made some modifications there. Took a little bit more than I needed to, but I could probably use to take more off of this side, but it doesn't have to happen. It's not in anybody's way. I really, again, I didn't want to cut holes in my Tandy, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. If you want to make it sing, you got to make those modifications, you know. So we're going to put it back together real carefully. Make sure you put the right screws in the right spots, because it's very easy to screw that up on this machine, and it really does matter. There are 3 different screw sizes. You've got these little short guys. You've got these long ones. These are all external. And you've got these here, which are internal. Yeah, there's just kind of a mixed bag of screws. It's just how they made them, for whatever reason. Here's a shot of it assembled, and I put a label there so I know what kind of battery to order the next time it dies in case I forget. But it looks like I could, in theory, get that battery out without disassembly, but it would be very tricky. I mean, you can see the battery holder is right here. I could slide the battery out, but it would probably fall onto the logic board and create a much bigger problem. That's okay. I don't think the manufacturer ever figured out a way to fix this. They just fall right off. And that's why so many of these are for sale without these doors. And there's been a couple of folks out there who have started reproducing these, either through 3D printing, mostly through 3D printing methods, naturally. What I'm going to do, and the problem is that this lip here does not engage or lock into. But I distinctly remember when this was brand new, this door did lock in, but over time the plastic has deformed a bit. If there was a way to safely bend it back up, it would probably hold. But at least I have the door. Again, a lot of these get lost. I think what I'll do, I'm going to put a piece of 3M VHB adhesive. I'm going to put it, I have an idea, so that the door doesn't fall off or get slid off by accident in the future. Let's see if this does anything. Because again, I don't want to, accidentally lose that cover, Where'd it go? Do you know where it is? Do you? Punk? Huh? I just had it's right on the machine. Dummy. So we're going to just slide it on, right, like this, and push down. Look at that. I'm so smart. And getting it off isn't going to be that bad. It's strong adhesive, but it's not that strong. Moving on, let's do the rest of this. We got to go upstairs, set it up, and we got to install a utility. So I've been watching, while I'm doing this, I'm watching Rich Rebuilds. This guy's awesome. And in the video where he takes the Sherp to the frozen lake, at one particular scene, he was less than half a mile from my house. Anyway. So I put the tape on, then I'm like, wait a minute, how do you get it apart? I don't think I can. Uh-oh. I used too much. That's what happened. How do we get it apart without breaking and scratching and benting and shit? That's going to be the challenge. Shit. So if you do what I just did, this is how you do it. You don't do as much. You go lightly on the VHB, my friends. Very lightly. There we go. Don't use the whole strip of it. Just use a small portion of that. You don't need all of that. Yeah. That's all you need. Don't go nuts. But this stuff is really strong. Really strong. There we go. You just slide it in, and then you push down, and look at that. It's like it's permanent. Like, you know where you put it, so you know where to put the pry tools if you need to. All right, so once you've installed the unit, you have to set the date and time first in DOS. Just use the date and time command. Oops. Enter the current time, date. The time has to be entered in military time. And once you do that, it'll self-correct to the AM, PM. Actually, that may not be necessary. I just remember older versions of DOS, they wouldn't accept a standard 12-hour time. Anyway, so I entered it as 1731:00 and then hit return. I put in so this version of DOS won't accept a 2-digit year. It has to be 4 digits. And this is DOS 5, I believe. DOS 5, yeah. Once you've done that, you've got to copy the file. So this instructional pamphlet here that you print out or read off screen, it describes it pretty succinctly. And it's important that you do these steps, because I was racking my brain at first. I couldn't get it to retain time. I'm like, great, I got a bad module, but that wasn't the case. I just didn't follow those damn instructions. So what you've got to do is, once you put in the date and time, you've got to run the SMW clock utility. That is available from this FTP site, which is in the instructions. When you buy the module, you can find the instructions, pretty easy to do. But what you need to do is, I copied all the files to a directory on the machine. I called it C:/clock. And then you put in those 3 files. But what you need to do is, once you set your date and time, you need to imprint that time onto the module to get it synchronized with what you've entered into the system clock. So you need to run the, it's called the SMW clock C. You just run that, and what it'll do is it will synchronize, it'll set the date and time on the module, and then you need to tell AutoExec to pull the date and time upon startup from the module and load it into the system. And you do that, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then this is DOS 5, so we have the DOS editor. Here we go. So here's the DOS editor, and you can see I just threw this command before the echo off, just like that. And as soon as you start the machine, I'll show you what it does. There's a lot of videos on this. My video is by far even close to being the best. V Westlife did a video on this on his Tandy 1000. Was it an SX or TL or something like that? I think it's a TL. So there we go. Correct date and time. Now this is a function this computer has not ever had before, but now it does. So when I load, for example, when I go into let's see where I put it. When I go over to apps. By the way, if you were watching my earlier videos on this, but when I first did the CF card mod, it would take forever to return a command prompt after running directory command. And what I found was, and this was suggested actually by RetroTech Chris, I had my partition too large. I wasn't thinking about partition sizes on old DOS machines, but so what I had was a partition size that was the size of the SD card, which was, gosh, what is that thing? Like, how big is that card? It's huge. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So it was too large, and it was taking 256 megabytes. That's a pretty good size partition for DOS. That's like enormous for something of this age. So what I did is I chopped the drive up into smaller bits. And anyway, so we're going to go into Tandy Deskmate. I think it's on here. I hope it is. Here we go. So I should be able to pull up the calendar and look at this. March 12th, 2022. Today's Saturday. And there's Saturday. So it actually is working. Oh, one more thing. When I initially had done the modification, I noticed that if I open up Deskmate and I opened up a file and I made some changes to it, it wouldn't let me save the changes. It would turn back file or directory error. It didn't know what to do with and I think what happened was the directory was so large that Deskmate didn't acknowledge it. It was like, what the hell is this? So it didn't know how to calculate free space. So what I was getting was actually out of space errors. That's what it was. And now with a smaller partition, the partition I'm using now is about 20 megabytes. which is, again, pretty large for something of that time period. So now I can actually save within DeskMate, which means I can now use DeskMate to create calendars. Amelia, you like that, don't you?
I do.
I like that. So I can make calendars in DeskMate, which is something that, you know, in the 30 plus years I've owned this computer, I haven't been able to do. So that's kind of cool. So we'll quit out of Paint. So if I open up the calendar tool, I can create a calendar. Actually, how is that done?
Not that you're going to use it or anything.
Oh, hell no. But at least I can do it. I mean, that's you know, half the battle, right?
You're going to be leaving your own food.
Who would have thought that Tandy DeskMate was Y2K compliant? Look at that, 2022. Why is Wednesday starred? What's that star there for? I don't know. Does it Ash Wednesday? So it knows when the holidays are. Pretty cool. So how do I get back? Previous? No, that's just display monthly. So what I can do now is I now have the ability, the futuristic ability to say, okay, on the 16th, we're going to Disney World, right? Disney. So, okay, we're going to Disney on the 16th. Just kidding, we're not. And then I can go back to monthly view, and it shows here as an event. And on the 14th, we have to trade in car again. I just bought a car 3 days ago, and anyway, go back to monthly, and there it is. There's my event. Now, if I print this out, I can print the range. I can do 3-1. Cancel that. Oh, I had the wrong printer selected. Let's fix that. Tandy low res. We have a Tandy high res actually. Oh, it is the IBM medium res. That's what it is. All right. So I should be able to print this guy out. And 3-1 to 3-31. Cancel that. It's a really kludgy interface. 301 to 331. Where are you? And then I hit OK to printer. Oh, look at that.
You can bring your calendar.
Yes.
I need that in my life.
March 22. We'll get back to you. So that is a printed calendar, but look at this. It doesn't show you the events. And on the 14th, there should be a star or something, but the 17th has, what is the 17th? Is that a holiday? Oh, that's St. Patrick's Day, okay. So what I've got to do is see if there's any settings in here that will allow me to print a calendar like that with the events printed on it. I bet you there's like a page setup option or something in here. Page setup. Send control sequence. Really? So you can do, oh, all right, it'll do portrait, landscape, and column view. I wonder what that looks like. Oh, okay. Needs improvement. I can do, you know what I could do? List events. I'll print moved it to the screen so I don't have to run the printer, but okay, so there's that. But this is, yeah, this is how it prints calendars. Okay, I've always wondered that. I've had this software since 1989 or 1990, and I didn't know that you could do that. Oh, after all these years, like, it's just crazy. Escape, quit. And there you have it. Now there are some, the reason I wanted to do this is there really are some cool calendar making utilities in DOS, or available for DOS, that I can now use. So I can create calendars. I can do some other, you know, helpful things with this machine. I could run a business on this. No, I won't do that. But yeah, that's very nice to have. I can keep track of dates and times. It just seems like such a basic thing, but in 1990, back in the tail end of the XT era, you know, that was still a thing. Computers could not keep track of dates and times. But it just seems so rudimentary. Of all the things that a computer could actually do back then, that wasn't one of them. Unless you paid extra for the module to make it happen. And again, I don't think there was ever a module commercially available for the HX. This was Radio Shack's lower end machine. I think this was the least affordable DOS machine, at least Radio Shack and Tandy sold. The EX and the HX. So if you have a Tandy 1000 EX, it is the same module. The installation instructions are a little bit different, but they are available, easily found from that website. I will post in the about this video field, or the more, what do they call it? More information. Anyway, so keep on trucking. All right.